He had all everything imaginable across those endless stretches of asphalt, barrel of oil, heavy furniture, ton of grain, et then a clandestine shipment of cations. But never, not once in his 25 years on the road, had Jack Coleman transported a coffin. And absolutely nothing could have prepared him for the chilling sound that emanated from inside that wooden box. It was 1h17 du matin on Highway 285, a desolate ribbon of road carving ETS way through the frozen heart of the Colorado Rockies. Snow fell in thick, relentless sheets, a silent, whispering curtain that transformed the world beyond this windshield into an eerie tunnel of shifting ghosts. The steady, lonely hum of his engine, synchronized with the rhythmic sweep of the whipper, created a hypnotic lullaby that only deepened the isolation. Jack Coleman was no stranger to the road's dark embrace. Storm didn't phase him, anti-miles felt no fear, and the profound blackness of a mountain night was merely a backdrop to his solitary existence. But this night felt different. This night, he couldn't shake the unsettling sensation that something in the vast, unforgiving dark was watching back. The cargo manifest had been starkly brief, private medical transport. Destination, Las Cruces, New Mexico. Inside his trailer, secured with unforgiving steel cable, sat a sealed oak coffin. A solitary red cross, stark against the dark wood, was ETS only marking. The client, a man who paid double in crisp, cold cash, had delivered a set of unbreakable rule, no rest stop, no opening the trailer, and absolutely no question asked. Jack, a man who had long since learned the wisdom of silence, simply drove. But then, somewhere between the key tones of fair play and Poncha Pass, the radio flickered to life with a sudden burst of static. From the intuned airwave, a woman's voice, soft and trembling, began to pray, "Hi Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee." Jack frowned. HIS radio was off, no station had been selected. His hand reached to switch it off completely, three slow, deliberate knock echoed from the very trailer behind him. He froze. The knocking came again, louder this time, then silence. Jack instinctively eased off the accelerator, his hammering a frantic rhythm against the steering wheel. The snow outside thickened, and through the swirling mist red, a light appeared. It was a soft, ethereal blue, almost alive, hovering inexplicably in the middle of the anti-road. He slammed on the brake. Tear shrieked a desperate protest, beating into the icy asphalt as snow exploded around his truck. The light shimmered, coalescing, and slowly began to take the luminous form of a woman, draped in flowing blue and white. She turned her face toward him. Her eyes, filled with an ancient sorrow, streamed with tears, yet her expression radiated en impossible peace. Then, she lifted a delicate hand and gently touched the air, precisely where the trailer stood. In the next breath, the light vanished, and from the deep silence of the truck's rear, a voice emerged, weak, unmistakably human, and filled with an overwhelming terror. "Help me, please." Jack stared into the heart of the storm, a chilling certainty blooming in his gut. Whatever was inside that coffin was not dead. And somehow, deep in his weary bones, he knew, with an indeniable conviction, that he had just witnessed the Virgin Mary. Jack Coleman had witnessed enough of life's brutal reality to extinguish any lingering flicker of belief in miracle. He had once been a man of faith, praying, attending church every Sunday, his hand clasped in his wife's a day hymns that spoke of open grace. But after cancer had mercilessly claimed her, and the crushing hospital bill had devoured everything else they owned, Jack's singing died. HIS prayer ceased. Eventually, he simply stopped caring if God was still out there at all. For 25 years, the road became his sole companion. Mile after solitary mile, town blurring into town, the endless hum of his engine became the only rhythm of his heartbeat. HIS powerful headlight, piercing the darkness, were his only company. He ate at lonely dinner that never closed and slept in truck stop reeking of diesel and the pervasive scent of human loneliness. People once called him a Saint-Jacques for his unwavering willingness to help other drivers stranded in snowdrift or wrestling with flat tire at 3 in the morning. Now, they simply called him a ghost. He didn't drink, he rarely spoke, he just drove. That particular December night, Jack was nursing a cold coffee in a small, greasy trucker bar in Colorado Springs when a man in a tailor black coat approached his booth. The man reeked of money a pressed suit, a glinting silver watch, and a smile far too calm for comfort. Monsieur Coleman purred, and Jack offered a curt no in reply. Here you're the one who never miss a delivery, the man stated, his voice smooth as silk. I've got a special job for you. I pay, quick trip, very simple rule. Jack raised an eyebrow, a silent invitation for him to continue. No stop. No question. Don't open the cargo. You'll deliver it by down. The man then slid a thick envelope across the table cash. Enough to pay off Jack's overdue mortgage on the trailer park low et reluctantly called home. Jack, his curiosity piqued despite himself, asked what he would be hauling. The man leaned in, his voice dropping to a quiet, unsettling murmure. A body. Family request. Seal transport. It's important you follow direction precisely. Jack hesitated, a flicker of his steering within him, then let out a sigh. Allons à it's legal. The man's lips curled into a faint, enigmatic smile. It's spiritual. Then he placed something else on the table, an old rosary, UTS bead worn smooth and translucent with edge. He found this in the coffin, he explained, his eyes never leaving Jack's. It must have belonged to her. Keep it for protection. Jack almost scoffed, a dry, bitter log catching in his throat. Buddy, he gave up on that kind of protection years ago. But the man didn't blink, his gaze wavering. Even when you stop believing, he whispered, she doesn't stop watching. Jack, a man of ardent practicality, pocketed the rosary, finished his coffee, and walked out into the beating cold night. The first flake of snow had just begun to fall. He didn't know it yet, but the Mother of God was already reading with him. The man had introduced himself a Richard A., owner of a private funeral transport company based out of Denver. But something about him simply didn't fit. His polished shoes were ludicrously impractical for the accumulating snow, and his eyes held a disquieting intensity, never blinking long enough to seem truly human. Jack had encountered all types on the road, liar, smuggler, men desperate enough to do anything. But this one made his skin tighten with an inexplicable sense of dread. Richard followed Jack out to the parking lot, where his old Freightliner idled under a flickering street lamp. Steam billowed from the exhaust in long, anxious white breath, as if the truck itself sensed the ominous nature of the cargo. The cargo is already loaded, Richard stated, his voice de voix of emotion. En haut coffin, secured within a steel crate. The woman's name is sur le vent. He slipped a sealed envelope into Jack's gloved on the full payment. You deliver it to St. Agnes Cemetery in Las Cruces before sunrise, parked by the east gate. Someone will meet you there. Jack pulled open the trailer door just enough to peer inside. A simple, unadorned wooden coffin, a stark red cross burned onto ETS lid, frost glistening along ETS edge. A sudden, profound chill snaked through his spine, cold even then the frigid air around him. When he turned back, Richard wasn't looking at him, but at the small silver rosary now dangling from Jack's pocket. You kept it, Richard remarked, a faint, unsettling smirk curling his lips. Jack shrugged. Didn't think much of it. You should, the man whispered, his voice holding an unnerving edge. Sometimes she protect even those who mock her. Before Jack could respond, Richard's phone rang. He stepped away, speaking rapidly in low, urgent tone, passing like a man watching a countdown clock. When he returned, the smirk was gone, replaced by a steely grimness. Drive safe, monsieur. Coleman, and remember, don't stop for anything. He then vanished into the swirling snowstorm, swallowed whole by the relentless flak. Jack climbed into his truck, the whole Freightliner groaning awake. He hung the rosary on the dash, half out of habit, half because something in that man's word had lodged, cold and heavy, deep in his chest. The bead caught the dashboard light, glowing faintly red, like distant amber. As he pulled onto the highway, the radio sparked again, a mere whisper this time, almost lost beneath the engine's rumble, blessed are the Purinat, for they shall see God. Jack exhaled slowly, a wry humor escaping his lips. Guess you won't be seeing much then et muttered, and the storm, thick a falling ashes from a grey, suffocating sky, swallowed him whole. Jack leaned forward, clutching the wheel, the heat blasting, whipper slapping a relentless rhythm against the glass. The road red wound through the Rockies like a silver snake buried under fresh white dust. He had navigated this route 100 times, but never had it felt so utterly empty. Highway 285 at night, in a blizzard, possessed a profound, mind-breaking solitude. No radio, no headlight visible in his mirror, just the monotone hum of tear against ice and the pulse of the raging storm. HES breeze fogged the windshield, his coffee long since gone cold. He reached for the radio dial, desperate for any sign of life. All he found was static, until a faint voice cut through soft, feminine, impossibly calm. "I Mary, full of grace." Jack blinked. The channel display was blank. He turned the knob again, and the voice faded, then returned, closer this time. The Lord is with thee. The sound was no longer from the radio, it resonated from behind him, from inside the trailer. HES stomach tightened into a knot of ice. No way, he muttered, frantically shaking his mirror. The trailer was sealed, locked tight. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckle white. Every jarring bump on the icy road sent a dull, visceral thud through the truck's frame. Then, 3 distinct knocks, slow, even, deliberate. Tinc, tinc, tinc. Jack en buguant tout tremble incontrôlably. He blasted the music, en all country ballad, anything to drown out the impossible sound. But after a few frantic seconds, the stereo fizz then died, plunging the cab back into terrifying silence. For a long, agonizing stretch of highway, there was only the storm's shriek and the silence of the cab. Then, a low, résonnant hum filled the truck, a vibration Jack felt more than heard. The rosary engine on his dash buggant to sway, UTS small cross gently tapping against the glass. Jack frowned. Must be the road, he told himself, but deep down, something primal shifted within him, en implacable une taking route. I crested the next snowblown hill, a figure appeared on the shoulder red, small, utterly motionless, almost glowing in the swirling white. He slowed, squinting through the furious storm. For a moment, it appeared to be a woman, kneeling, unclasped, her face lifted towards the heavens. Then, a violent gust of wind swept across the highway, and the figure vanished, if it had never been there. Jack whispered under his breath, a desperate plea, "Sweet Mother of God." The rosary on the dash stilled. And then, the engine, his faithful companion for 2 decades, cooked once, harrowed, dying gasp, and fell utterly silent. The truck glided to a stop in the absolute middle of nowhere, plunged into darkness. The only sound left was the whisper of snow against cold steel. And one last, faint knock from inside the coffin. The storm howled outside, a living, raging entity. Jack sat in the dark, frigid cab, his breath clouding the freezing air. Every nerve in his body was stretched taut, screaming. The headlights were dead. The engine, silent. The entire world seemed to have simply stopped moving. Then, 3 sharp, indeniable knocks from the trailer, tinc. 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 Steady. Human. Jack froze, a cold dread seizing him. HES first desperate thought was logic, perhaps the cargo had shifted, perhaps the crate had come loose. But the sound came again, this time with a cry buried deep within it. A muffled voice, weak, utterly terrified, "Help me, please." Jack sat lurched, a sickening jump. He spun in his seat, staring into the sealed steel doors behind him through the rear-view mirror. Impossible, he whispered, his voice raw. "You're not supposed to be alive." The snow pounded hard now, each gust shaking the massive trailer. He fumbled for his flashlight, his fingers numb and clumsy with cold. Then, he pushed open the door and stepped out into the storm. The frigid air slammed into him like a physical blow, snow whipping his face, stinging his eyes with icy shard. He trudged to the back, his boots crunching loudly in the deepening drift. Another knock, louder, more desperate now. Jacques breeze came in ragged burst of fog. Hang on, and screamed over the wind, his voice thin and lost. No answer, just a soft, heartbreaking sob from the other side of the door. He yanked a crowbar from his side compartment wedged it beneath the padlock. HISant, clumsy with cold and terror, shook violently and pried it open. The protesting still screamed, a tearing sound against the storm. Then, everything ceased. The wind died, the sound vanished, even the frantic snow seemed to hang suspended, motionless in midair. A profound silence descended, deeper than anything Jack had ever known. He looked up and saw it, a light, impossibly soft and blue-white, spreading across the entire back of the trailer. It wasn't emanating from the truck, it was on the truck. A woman's form, luminous and gentle, began to coalesce from that lighter veil flowing, her hand open, her eyes filled with ancient, poignant sorrow. Her presence, however, did not frighten him. It stilled him, enveloped him in an absolute, profound calm. The snow around her did not fall to the ground, it simply vanished in midair. She looked at him, and he swore he heard her whisper, not through sound, but directly into the core of his being, do not be afraid. Jack fell to his knees, the crowbar clattering from his numb into the snow. Through the cab window, the rosary on his dashboard began to glow a vibrant, pulsing red. Then, as swiftly as she had appeared, the light faded, and the silence shattered. The storm returned, the wind screaming at his fury once more. Jack blinked, dazed, disoriented. The padlock snapped open with a final, metallic pop, and from the darkness within the trailer, the voice came again, loud, more desperate, incredibly, undeniably alive, please don't let them bury me. Jack gripped the trailer door handle. For the first time in 20 years, he whispered a prayer, I Mary, full of grace, and pulled the heavy steel door open. The hinge groaned in protest as they slowly swung wide. Inside, the dim beam of Jack's flashlight sliced through the frozen air. The oak coffin sat at the center of the trailer, plain, sealed, covered in a delicate layer of frost. Every surface of it was trembling, vibrating, as if something vital within was fighting, desperately, for air. Sweet Lord, Jack whispered, stepping closer. He could hear the muffled sobbing now, undeniably human. Whoever was inside was alive. He dropped to his knees beside the coffin, his tracing the cold, unyielding lid. There were no handles, only a series of thick nails and a dark wax seal. Stamped across the top were the chilling word, private medical transport. Do not open. Jack hesitated, his breath shaking. What the hell did they put in here? Another phantom came from within, then silence. He couldn't away. He wedged the crowbar beneath the lid and pulled with every ounce of strength left in his arms. The nail shrieked loose, one by agonizing one. As the final nail gave way, something fell from his jacket pocket, the rosary. It clattered onto the metal floor and burst into a faint, ethereal red glow, filling the trailer with a pulse of light that seemed to belong to another world entirely. Jack blinked. The air inside the trailer felt perceptibly warm, almost gentle. He lifted the lid. Inside, curled in the cramped space, was a young woman, barely 20, pale and shaking, duct tape cruelly stretched across her mouth, her wrist bound tightly with nylon cord. Her eyes flew open at the rush of fresh air. She gasped, coughing violently, her entire body convulsing with the effort to breathe. Jack tore the tape away and gently cradled her shoulder. Easy, easy, he soothed, his voice rogue with emotion. You're safe now. You're safe. She clung to him, her voice broken, barely a whisper. They tried to bury me alive. Jack wrapped his heavy coat around her, cutting the rope with his pocket knife. She was freezing, her skin ice cold, her lips blue. He poured water from his thermos into her mouth, his hand shaking so violently he nearly dropped it. Who did this to you? He asked. She struggled to speak, but only one name, a gasp of pure terror, escaped her lips, Richard. Jack froze. The man from Denver. Then, her eyes drifted past him, towards the glowing rosary on the floor. They widened, tears flooding down her pale cheek. She was here, the girl whispered, a shocked sob. The lady in blue, she touched me, and he could breathe again. Jack followed her gaze. The light from the rosary flickered once, then dimmed, half bowing in silent acknowledgement. He stared at the girl, a profound realization dawning in his soul. The Virgin Mary hadn't just shown him a sign, she had led him directly to a soul still desperately clinging to life. She sat wrapped in Jack's coat, shivering uncontrollably in the dim glow of his flashlight. Snow still hissed against the trailer walls, but inside, time seemed too old to breathe. Her name, she finally managed to tell him, was Emily Carter. 21 years old, the daughter of Thomas Carter, a name Jack knew well, the owner of one of Colorado's largest transport company. Jack stared at her, utterly speechless. Everyone in the business knew the Carter name. How, he finally managed, his voice raspy. How did you end up in here? Emily's eyes were distant, glazed with exhaustion and terror. I was on my way home from class. Someone grabbed me in the parking lot. A needle. He woke up in darkness. She paused, her en trembling uncontrollably. At first, he thought he was in a morgue. He couldn't move, couldn't scream. He tried to pray, but the air was too thin to even breathe a word. Jack swallowed hard, remembering the three impossible knock, the muffled voice, the ethereal whisper on his radio. Then what happened? He asked softly. He started saying the I Mary in my head, she whispered, her voice barely audible. And right when he said, pray for us sinner now and at the hour of our death, the box filled with light, warm, soft light, like sunlight through water. She looked up at him, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. He saw her, Jack, a woman in blue and white, standing beside me. She touched my chest, and he could breathe again. Jack said nothing, his own had too full. The faint glow from the rosary on the floor flickered, half showing her word. Emily took a shaky breath. She told me only one thing, she continued, her voice gaining a fragile strength. Someone will hear you knock 3 times. So he did, she concluded, her voice breaking. Over and over. And then. He heard your engine. Jack turned away for a moment, wiping the corner of his eye with the back of his gloved hand. He hadn't prayed in years, being dead frozen, impossible moment, something deep within him stirred a profound pulse of forgotten faith, awakened and roaring back to life. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. She saved me, Jack. The Virgin saved me. I just don't know why. Jack looked at her, the storm's furious light flickering through the trailer's crack, painting her face in silver and blue. I don't care, he said quietly. But I think we're about to find out. Jack slammed the trailer doors shut, locking them from the outside with what remained of the mangled latch. He helped Emily climb into the cab, wrapping a heavy blanket around her trembling shoulder. She was pale, still shaking violently, but miraculously, alive. The snowstorm outside had intensified into a whiteout, blinding walls swirling in every direction. Visibility was almost zero. Jack started the engine. The powerful diesel roared back to life, a guttural rumble cutting through the frozen air. Hold on, he said, gripping the wheel, his jaw tight. We're getting out of here. The truck lurched forward, tear spinning wildly for traction before finally beating into the icy road. Suddenly, the radio crackled again. This time, a man's voice, calm and chillingly familiar, cut through the static. Driver of the white Kenworth, stop your vehicle. Jack's blood ran cold. It was Richard's voice, the very man who had heard him. Emily gasped, her eyes wide with terror. That's him. How the hell? Jack began, but then, in his rearview mirror, headlight appeared, 2 dark SUVs, their beams slicing through the storm, closing fast. They're following us. Emily cried. Jack floored the accelerator. The old truck groaned, fighting for every inch it climbed the Trishrew Mountain Road, snow spraying in every direction. But the SUVs were faster, lighter, relentlessly closing the distance. Gunshot cracked through the night sharp, distant pop swallowed by the screaming wind. Bullets sparked against the trailer's reinforced steel. Get down. Jack shouted, his voice hoarse. Emily crushed low beneath the dashboard, clutching her head. Jack's mind raced. The next curve was notorious, impossibly sharp, the road dangerously narrow. Beyond it, a sheer descent would drop. They'd be dead if they missed it. Then, through the blinding blizzard, they saw it, a faint blue light, hovering directly over the bend, soft and steady, like a guiding lantern. It wasn't from a car, it was suspended impossibly in the air, shimmering through the hat of the storm. Jack blinked hard, trying to reconcile it with reality. You see that? He yelled over the wind. Emily lifted her head, tears glistening on her face. It's her, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. The Virgin's light glowed brighter as they approached the deadly curve. For the first time all night, Jack felt an inexplicable peace settle over him, a profound calm and certainty, even as the road itself vanished beneath the relentless snow. He eased the wheel, following the mesmerizing glow. The massive truck slid, fishtailing dangerously, yet somehow, impossibly, it corrected itself. The tear gripped. The engine steadied. The blue light led them unerringly through the treacherous curve, then vanished into the swirling mist as quickly as it had appeared. Behind them, the first SUV missed the turn completely. ETS headlight tilted wildly, spun once, and then disappeared into the black abyss of the ravine below. The second one slammed ETS brake, skidding sideways, stopping mere inch from the terrifying edge. Jack exhaled a ragged, shaking breath, his knuckle white against the steering wheel. Emily whispered through tears, she saved us again. Jack nodded slowly, the reflection of the rosary glowing faintly on the windshield. No, he said softly, a profound conviction in his voice. She's saving both of us. By dawn, the storm had finally broken. The road had opened into a small, picture postcard mountain town, wooden cabin, snow-covered roof, a single church steeple piercing the muted grey morning sky. Jack struck, a battered hulk of defiance, crawled through the empty streets until the glowing red sign of St. Luke's clinic appeared like a beacon, a promise of safety in the distance. He parked crookedly out front, jumped out, and gently carried Emily inside. The immediate warmth of the lobby enveloped them both like a comforting wave. Nurse gasped when they saw her, pale, half-frozen, wrapped in Jack's oil-stained blanket. Within minutes, doctors were rushing her into the emergency room. Jack stood numbly in the doorway, trembling, his hands still bleeding from the crowbar, barely able to breathe. The past 12 hours felt like a fever dream snow, fear, and an undeniable light from heaven. Then he felt it again, the soft, undeniable the same transcendent presence from the highway. He turned towards the hallway, where a statue of the Virgin Mary stood, candle flickering beneath it. The air around it shimmered faintly, almost imperceptibly. A nurse touched his shoulder. Sir, you said you found her. Jack nodded, still staring at the statue. Yeah, he whispered, or maybe she found me. Moment later, a pair of police officers, their uniform soaked with melted snow, their radio buzzing with urgent report, entered the clinic. They began to ask questions. Who hired you? Where did you pick her up? What did he look like? When Jack uttered the name Richard, the older officer froze. Richard, he repeated, his voice laced with recognition. That name is on our warrant list. Former employé of Carter Logistics. Fired 3 months ago for theft and assault. Jack blinked, the puzzle piece clicking into place. Emily's father, Thomas Carter, arrived just as they spoke, escorted by more officers. His face crumpled in profound relief and agony when he saw his daughter, alive. He dropped to his knees, sobbing openly, clutching her en Achilles, safe and breathing, under warm blanket. And then something truly impossible happened. As Thomas looked up, his gaze fell upon the rosary on Jack's dashboard, visible through the clinic's glass doors. It was glowing, a soft, ethereal blue light swirling around the cross like living fire. Everyone saw it, the nurse, the police officer, the grief-stricken father all frozen in silent, collective awe. The light pulsed once, twice, and then slowly faded. Emily whispered, barely audible, she's here. The detective, a hardened man of the law, slowly removed his hat, his voice low and revere. Look like the Virgin had a hand in this one. Jack didn't answer. He simply bowed his head, allowing the tears he could no longer hide to fall freely. The storm was long gone, but profound silence lingeait. A week passed since that impossible night on the highway. Emily was safe, recovering steadily. The police had captured the men behind the kidnapping, and the story had exploded across every news channel in the state. Truck driver saves their ass from being buried alive, the headline blared. They called Jack a hero, but he didn't feel like one. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that ethereal blue light hovering in the snow, and the gentle face of the woman who had whispered into his very soul, "Do not be afraid." On Sunday morning, for the first time in nearly 15 years, Jack parked his truck outside St. Agnes Church. He stood there for a long moment, buried deep in his jacket pocket, staring at the stained glass windows, glowing vibrant in the crisp winter sun. Inside, the church smelled of beeswax candle and aged cedar. People knelt in hushed reverence, their breath a faint mist in the cold air. Jack slipped into a back pew, he said bowed. He didn't know how to pray anymore, words felt too small, too inadequate for what he had witnessed. Then, the priestess voice rose from the pulpit, reading from the Gospel of Luke, "Blessed are those who hear the word of God and keep it." Jack's throat tightened. He thought of the impossible knocking, the faint, terrified voice, the otherworldly glow on the steel. He had heard something that night, and against all odds, he had answered. When mass ended, he remained, long after everyone else had filed out, leaving only the faint echo of their footsteps. He lifted his eyes towards the altar and froze. At the far end of the hall, near the statue of the Virgin Mary, a soft blue light shimmered against the very same light from the highway, the same profound peace that had wrapped the raging storm in silence. The figure of the Virgin stood radiant in the stillness, her gaze tender, almost smiling. Her hand rose gently, as in blessing. Jack felt his knees give out. Tears streamed freely down his weathered face as he whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." When he looked up again, the light was gone. But his hat, after all those years of darkness, was miraculously alive again. 1 year later, spring had arrived early in Colorado. The last stubborn trace of snow had vanished, replaced by vibrant ribbon of green along the very highway Jack once drove for a living. He had sold his old Freightliner and bought a smaller pickup truck, enough to get around, but not enough to outrun the profound peace he now carried. He worked as a safety consultant for Carter Logistics, a position Thomas Carter had insisted upon after the trial concluded. "After what you did," Thomas had told Jack, his voice thick with gratitude, "you'll always have a place with us." Emily had returned to college, majoring in social work, dedicating her life to helping others. She sent postcards every month from wherever she volunteered: nursing homes, homeless shelter, children's hospital. Each one was signed the same way: "Keep listening to the road, Jack. She's still guiding you." That morning, Jack walked to his mailbox and found a small package with no return address. Inside was a tiny metal keychain, perfectly shaped like a semi-truck. Etched on its side in delicate script were the word, "Thanks for stopping and listening." He smiled, one of those deep, genuine smiles that begin somewhere near the heart. He turned the keychain over in his palm. It was warm, as if it had been sitting in sunlight. He looked up at the clear sky, the majestic Rockies rising in the distance, and thought about all the times he had driven past Cree for help without stopping. That one night he had listened, truly listened, and everything had changed. A soft, fragrant breeze swept across his yard. The wind chimed on his porch began touring, took no visible wind touched them. And for just a second, he heard it again, the faintest whisper in the air. "Do not be afraid." Jack closed his eyes, tears of gratitude welling up. He lifted the small rosary that still hung from his rearview mirror and smiled through the blur. "I'm not," he whispered. "Not anymore." For the first time in decades, the road ahead felt light. 3 years after the night of the storm, Jack Coleman sat in a Key studio in Denver, a microphone glowing softly before him. The sign above the door read, touched by grace, true stories of modern miracle. And never imagined a be the one telling one. The producer behind the glass gave a thumb up. Jack leaned forward, his weathered and folded together, eyes closed for a moment before he began to speak. I'm not appreciate, he said, his voice low, steady, and resonant. I'm just a truck driver. I spent half my life looking at road lines and the other half trying to forget everything he'd lost. He paused, the fame of the studio almost imperceptible behind him. That night on Highway 285, he thought he was just doing a job. He didn't know he was solving a miracle. He heard knocking from a coffin, and when he opened it, he found a life still breathing. But that wasn't the biggest miracle. The real one was what came after. He took a slow, deliberate breath. He saw her, the Virgin Mary. He don't know how. He don't know why, but he know what he saw, a light in the snow that told me not to be afraid, a warm that filled the coldest place of my life. Jack looked up, his eyes glistening. For years, he thought God had stopped caring. Turn out he just needed me to listen again. He smiled faintly. Maybe that is why the knock came 3 times. One for the body he saved, one for the soul he almost lost, and one for anyone out there who has forgotten what grace sounds like. The room fell utterly silent. Even the air seemed to hold his breath. Jack leaned closer to the microphone, his voice soft but wavering. If you're driving through a storm tonight, if you feel like you're alone, remember the Mother of God still walks the road with us. Some team she read in the passenger seat of a tired man who is finally ready to stop and listen. He ended with a key whisper, half prayer, half promise, I Mary, full of grace. Thank you for finding me in the dark. For a long moment after he finished, no one in the studio spoke. Only the red recording light remained, steady like a candle in the night. The episode ended, but the world, it seemed, kept listening. A month after the recording aired, email and letters began to flood the Touched by Grace studio. Message came from trucker, nurse, veteran, widow, single parent. Each one, in its own unique way, said the same thing, he heard your story, Jack, and it made me believe again. Some told him they started praying the rosary on their long drive. Others said they found the strength to forgive people they thought they never could. One woman wrote, he was about to give up until he heard you say the word, she's still walking the road with us that night, he left the pill on the counter, and I'm still here. Jack never replied with grand speech. He simply wrote back, thank you for listening. She found you, too. Some team, when he drove the short route near the mountains, he would pass the very curve where the miracle had unfolded. The guardrail had been repaired long ago, the snow had melted away with the seasons. But if he slowed down at just the right moment, he could still discern a faint shimmer on the side of the hill, like a woman's silhouette outlined in light, fading gently with the dawn. He would touch the rosary hanging from his rear view mirror and whisper, I Mary, full of grace. Then he would smile, shift gears, and keep driving. Because faith, he had learned, wasn't about escaping the road. It was about trusting who walks it with you. And if you've made it this far, perhaps you felt something, too, a warmth, a gentle tug, a whisper that reminds you are not alone. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Touched by Grace, where real stories of hope, faith, and modern miracle remind the world that heaven is closer than we think. Because some team, Jack's voice echo one last time, miracle don't happen in church. They happen on the road when someone finally choose to stop and listen.